Ellen, I suppose GDPR almost upon us. What are the challenges it poses from a data protection viewpoint?
Yeah, we're just about 6 weeks out from GDPR application date today. So as you know, it's a data protection law that applies to every sector, every size of organisation. And its essence is that it requires organisations to become accountable in the way that they process personal data. So this means that organisations have to take to their core and have to have it pervade the culture of their organisation in terms of how they handle personal data. So there are lots of enumerated areas in the GDPR of accountability. For example, many organisations will need to appoint a data protection officer. Organisations will need to conduct data protection impact assessments. In certain cases, there will be mandatory breach notification to data protection authorities under GDPR and so on. So it's undoubtedly the case that even for small organisations, and certainly the case for large organisations, that a plan is necessary to comply, budget and resources will be necessary to comply. A significant feature of the GDPR is that aside from requiring accountability from organisations, is that it's backing up that accountability that organisations must demonstrate now with very strong ex post enforcement powers for data protection authorities. So we will have, for example, an ability to fine organisations up to 20 million or 4% of global turnover in certain cases. So the key message are it's accountability for organisations, strong ex post enforcement powers for data protection authorities where that accountability breaks down or is absent.
Well, that's the interaction between your body, your office and those organisations. But for consumers, for the average person, what difference does this make?
So for consumers, they should start seeing from May much clearer information from organisations in terms of how they collect and process data. We've lived up to now with very opaque privacy policies offered by organisations, and the GDPR now really calls out that these are no longer good enough. Individuals, the man on the street, the woman on the street, has to be communicated with now in intelligible, clear and concise information in terms of how their data is collected and processed. Individuals now also have much clearer enumerated rights under the GDPR. They have a right to access a copy of all of their personal data from organisations. They have a right in certain circumstances to have their data deleted. They will have a right in certain circumstances to object to processing of their personal data. So all of these are very important new rights to give control back to data subjects in terms of how their personal data is collected and handled.